Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger, and it's another Seahawks game day. It is game 2 of the preseason for your Seattle Seahawks, and not only is that great news, but I've got a couple announcements to share today, and most importantly, my pal Jeff Simmons is on with us for another Seahawks Saturday, man. How are you, Jeff? Oop, you're on mute.
Not that good. I was just watching your buddy Shane Waldron. He was just on TV. The Bears had the starters into the second quarter, and they showed a couple screenshots of him. He doesn't look like he's in great shape. He looked kind of rough. But Caleb Williams was just playing like 7 minutes into the second quarter. So if you want to like Waldron Schadenfreude, there was some weird stuff going on.
I was watching that game. I have to say I was pretty annoyed because I was only watching that game because the Falcons decided to sit their entire squad, including their backup quarterback, their 8th overall pick, who's not supposed to play a snap all season. But they're like, nah, why would we give him snaps in the preseason? That doesn't make sense. Like, why were they not playing Michael Penix? I don't get that.
I don't get it either. Teams have just gone crazy cautious with this preseason game, and a lot of the Falcons have come from the Rams staff. A lot of their offensive coaches, Zach Robinson, I think they have another one from the Rams. And McVay was the one who kind of really shifted this, where they've just completely shut down the preseason. They don't play anyone. McVay didn't play Jared Verse, Fisk, and Blake Corum last week. Like, rookies need this time on anyone. So I wonder if they just got a little cautious. Apparently the Falcons had some injuries. So it seems like almost fear-mongering. And it's like the Chiefs are playing Mahomes, like, I think for a full half today. And, like, Penix isn't going to play for maybe 2 years. Like, he needs these reps. It's bizarre.
That one, like, I can kind of get my head around the Jared versus Fisk thing because those guys are going to play this year and maybe they feel like they've learned enough. Like, they're treating them like starters and they're getting enough reps, whatever. Penix isn't supposed to play, like you said. Like, what is the logic of having him not play in this game? It just doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, that was frustrating. But I did watch the Bears, and the Bears offense looked bad. And this is the thing I've got with Caleb Williams. I'm a little bit on an island, I think, on this. I think Caleb Williams makes all of the plays that most quarterbacks cannot. He makes all of the off-script, improvisational, that little pitch pass he did last week to DeAndre Swift, great example, rolling outside the pocket away from pressure and hitting guys on the run. He can do all of that as well or better than anyone else in the NFL already. I think he's very good at those plays. But within the framework of an offense, I haven't seen him do that consistently well, and today was a perfect example. Like, he didn't look like he was making good reads. He doesn't look like he was making good throws. And Shane Waldron also not helping him. 3 passes on the first 3 plays. Again, a kind of feckless run game. That was like giving me a little bit of agita, Jeff, from watching last year. The Seahawks.
It was funny. I had the same feel. And the first, they're going against the Bengals backup defense. So, the preseason is designed for the starters to move up and down the field pretty easily. And if they were going up against the Bengals first team defense, I would get it. But the first drives looked unusually hard. I think you talked about this last Saturday when we were on, how the Seahawks degree of difficulty in their passing game last year was so high. Everyone makes the natural assumption of it's just the O-line. But I think out of his first 6 passes, I think Williams was 2 for 6 for 18 yards. And there was a third down where DJ Moore is trying to run an in-cut, and he just completely it looked so hard against a Bengals 4th string defender. And then the next drive they come out and they run an end around for Rome Odunze. I don't know if you saw that. I'm like, oh my God, it's JSN all over again. And I'm like, that's not how I would use Rome Odunze. And then out of nowhere, after a horrible series, Caleb threw this unbelievable deep ball that gets called for PI. And it's like, okay. So it's almost exactly what you said. There was a slant on third down to DJ Moore.
Oops. Did we just lose you, Jeff? Yeah, so Jeff's talking about the Bears game and some of the challenges that we had that they had moving and Caleb Williams, he did eventually hit a deep pass. Well, it didn't really get hit. It was pass interference, but it was going to be completed. Oh, you're back.
I'm good.
So yeah, it's just we're not going to spend all this time talking about the Bears and Caleb Williams, but it's a big story this year. The Seahawks do play the Bears, and as much as I think that there's questions about that offense and my confidence that they're going to be as good as I think people are talking about him having a CJ Stroud season. He has the talent, but CJ Stroud plays within the framework of an offense really well. He also can play outside, but I don't know. Caleb is Shane Waldron, Bobby Slowick. Is Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud? I don't know. We're going to have to see. And that defense, though, I think the defense looks legit. Austin Booker, man, 3 sacks in his first game. That was rough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think their defense is going to be good. Their defensive head coach team, they brought back a lot of the same guys. Like Kyler Gordon looks really good when I was watching a little bit today, although it was against the Bengals second-string defense. But, yeah, Austin Booker's a guy none of us were really in on him. You were always like we got to keep talking about this guy. So many mocks, you're like, we're not talking about him enough, and he's flashing for sure. So, again, yeah, I think they're going to be solid on defense. But, yeah, man, it was a lot of uncomfortable. That reminded me a lot of watching the Seahawks last year. 3 receivers, they didn't know how to play in 11 personnel. They had no run game. They were easy to defend. Then out of nowhere, this beautiful, unbelievable play comes out of nowhere, and it's just like, okay, they have that, but it looked hard. And that was against the Bengals backups.
I have a question for you I'm dying to ask, but before I do, let me bring in a super chat from Isaac, one of our most generous super chatters and members. Says, just want to say that really and truly from the bottom of my heart and the deepest depths of my soul, I absolutely love my Hawks and fellow 12s, and I really, all caps, freaking hate, all caps, the whiners. Let's go, Hawks. Well, I felt that one, Isaac. I hear you, man, and appreciate you. And appreciate everyone who's been giving away memberships, everyone who's been joining as members. We're just growing and growing, and I'm using this as an opportunity just to remind folks that are new and listening, the way that you can receive a free membership is, first of all, you got to go click on the join button as a member and click on the 3 little dots and then say for gifting, enable gifting. So you may actually be a free membership might be on the other side of a click for you. So make sure you've enabled free gifting. The other thing is, if you want to give memberships to people, you got to either be on the desktop when you're watching the show and click to give gifts, or on an Android phone. It won't work on your iOS device. So we've had a lot of people giving away a lot of memberships and a lot of people joining the family. So those are just some notes there. The question I want to ask you, Jeff, you and I did a bunch of draft obsessing shows, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Of the players that you loved, which is the one that maybe you are most wishing the Seahawks had actually grabbed?
Malik Mustafa.
Mustafa?
Oh, it sucks, but it sounds. I don't know if you caught any of his highlights from last game. I know you're probably trying to avoid the Niners highlights as much as we can, but he made this play at the goal line where he just shot through and just slammed a guy like flat in the face. And like the Seahawks safeties have been pretty good, and like Kayvon Wallace has looked pretty good. So I don't know if there would have been room on the field, but just like based on everything that's been going on with McDonald, they've been physical, they've been tough, they're really working on tackling. Having like this like killer safety that can hit, and seeing him like flash like with 2 huge hits in the opening preseason week, they're talking about he might start. Like there was talk of them going Justin Simmons there, and he's in competition to start. So I'm not thrilled about it. If he's good, I'm going to be really annoyed. And also another guy we liked a lot, Dominic Pooney, has apparently been really, really solid for them. He might start at right guard. So I'd say Mustafa still bothered me, not only because I thought it was a mistake the Seahawks passed on him twice. Him landing in San Francisco gives me a lot of. If he's good, it's going to really eat at me.
Yeah, those are 2 good ones. I mean, some of the names that we talked about a lot that are candidates for this conversation. I just want to go through some of them that like I've been monitoring. First round, honestly, we got the guy I want, but I will just say Graham Barton had a dominant first game for Tampa. He looks like he could be the next great center. Now, it's just one game, but I thought he looked like a guy that could be that. And, we definitely spent a lot of time on him. I think he might end up being really, really good. Second round guys, we didn't have anyone to go there. It does sound like Tavondre Sweat, and talking to Titans folks, it has been much better. And him next to Jeffrey Simmons, the other Jeffrey Simmons, could be a big deal. Other guys, second round that I haven't heard anything about Chris Jenkins.
No,
I'm
not
curious. I'm wondering if he's done anything, but I haven't heard anything about him. Adonai Mitchell, it sounds like he's having a pretty good camp.
Yeah.
Ben Sinnott, been playing well for the Commanders. Michael Hall Jr., who I was a big fan of, but the one thing we couldn't know is who he was as a guy. Seems like that might not be so good, given some of the off-field stuff going on.
Yeah,
there.
Dane Brugler tweeted out this week that he was off a lot of boards because of character, and he might not have been in the Seahawks. And so many of our mock drafts were just purely based on his talent. We don't. That's why they're scouts. They know about the person.
Exactly.
We can only see the film and the talent, and we spent a lot of time on that guy. And that story was pretty ugly this week.
Yeah, for sure. Going into the third round, we talked a lot about Junior Colson. I haven't heard much about him. Have you?
No, he's been hurt. He just came off injury list this week. He didn't play against the Seahawks last week in the preseason game. And I'm not sure if they've had a lot of injuries. The Chargers are cursed, as always, like the Vikings. And no, he has barely practiced. And that was one of my big draft guys.
That was a big one. Cooper Beebe was one of your guys, for sure. I wasn't as high on Cooper Beebe. He sounds like he's having a great camp. Set to be a starter, I think. Him and Tyler Guyton are both playing pretty well.
Reading Brady Henderson's article that came out after the draft, a lot of us thought the guy the second round they were looking at was Junior Colson. Cooper Beebe was the guy they were almost traded up for. So he was, to them, probably like a bigger, more polished Christian Haynes. But I can't imagine they thought Haynes would be there in the third round when they were looking at that.
No. I mean, Cooper Beebe was a guy they clearly wanted. He's playing quite well. Unfortunately, Braylon Trice gets hurt, out for the year. That's a bummer. He was playing well for them. Jermaine Burton was a guy we talked about a little bit, the receiver. He seems to be, there's never a question about his talent as a receiver. It was a little bit about his off-field, want to. But as far as guys drafted after Christian Haynes in the third round, I don't regret the Tip Ryman thing. Roman Wilson sounds like he's playing pretty well, but I wouldn't rather have him. Zach Zinter sounds like he's playing really well. Have you heard that, Jeff?
I have.
But
So that,
again, I would have taken Haynes over him, but I love Zinter in this draft.
Yeah. I think Zinter was a guy that was tough to just see go elsewhere. Cam Kinchins has played well. I can't believe Luke McCaffrey was drafted in the third round. That
I know.
That's wild. Last round, I'll just kind of is the fourth because there's some guys there. So the Seahawks traded the second overall pick in the fourth round for who? The Broncos traded up to draft Troy Franklin, and he is absolutely looking like a bust, according to everybody in Broncos camp.
Haven't heard a word. And annoyingly, and I don't know if any of you follow like Zach Stevens on Twitter, he's sort of like he's not a Lombardi, he's not like a antagonistic guy, but it's like he's not really a beat writer. He kind of does what Corbin Smith does, but sort of works. But he's so cheery, and apparently the Broncos had a great practice yesterday against the Packers, and hearing like the Packers writers were just like they got crushed by the Broncos, and like you're hearing there's a lot of buzz about the Broncos coming from their beat writers, just like how good Bo Nix looks and how good their defense looks, and how that 5.5 over under looks embarrassing, and you've heard all this buzz, not a single word about Troy Franklin.
I have heard words about Troy Franklin. They haven't been good.
Yeah.
They haven't been good. So that's one. Cedric Gray has been hurt. That was a guy we talked about a fair amount. And then really, I mean, Tyrese Knight's looking like that could be a pretty good pick for the Seahawks. I think the AJ Barner one that is the one that you could say, wow, I wish that was Malik Mustafa and not AJ Barner. But there's not a lot behind Barner in the 4th round where it's like, man, those guys are really popping. So, I mean, as far as second guessing and, wishing things would have been a little different, there's not a lot so far where I was like, oh, I wish the Seahawks had done this instead of that, at least in the first four rounds.
Yeah, I think you nailed really the only one. If they flip out Mustafa with Barner kind of looks kind of how we evaluate him as a 5th, 6th round blocking tight end. Hasn't really flashed. And Tyrese Knight kind of looks like is playing kind of like a 2nd round pick, and everyone said he looked like a 6th round pick. But Cedric Gray was the guy like everyone would have been thrilled if the Seahawks took him with that 2nd pick of the 4th round. We haven't seen much for him, and so yeah, if you go through their first 4 picks, it's really hard, and especially like if you look at the last 3 drafts as like combined, and even if Derek Hall comes on, the pick right now that's like the Charbonnet pick is probably the biggest whiff over the last 3 years. If you're looking at what they should have done really differently, there's been some really interesting guys that went in that 2nd round last year, and if Hall and Charbonnet aren't great this year, then that's a big miss because there was a lot of talent there.
There was,
but really not a lot. Like this team, and you wrote a great article just about the amount of players that are emerging on this team. These last 3 drafts might look at totally different if McDonald can elevate this group.
Let's hold on to that thought because I do want to talk about exactly that in a second. Before I do, there's been a bunch of activity in chat. Pork Chop, spelled Pourk, has gifted a Hawk Blogger membership. That is very nice of you, man. Thank you for doing that. We also got Cameron as a new member, which is amazing. And then I believe, as I was looking at there goes Detail. Detail, man, is so appreciated that you do this. I hope you are making sure you take care of yourself. I know you're recovering, and make sure you're taking care of yourself. But there is 20 additional Hawk Blogger memberships that Detail has given. Pay it forward, folks. Find ways to pay it forward. Either upgrade your membership, gift memberships to other people. Let's not have just a few folks in the community holding the whole burden for everybody. Let's make sure we keep pushing this forward. Just had James Stewart join on patreon.com/hawkblogger. So welcome to James as well. So that there's 2 announcements I got to make, Jeff, and then we will get to the conversation you just teed up. The first is that for Patreon members, patreon.com/hawkblogger, you get access to the Slack channel. We are doing the first ever Hawk Blogger Fantasy Football League. So that is now open. It is being commissioned by one of our patrons. I think it's going to fill up pretty quickly, and we might start additional leagues, but we'll need commissioners for that. So if someone on the YouTube side wants to set up a league and be a commissioner of that, then let me know. Shoot me a note, either email note brian@hawkblogger.com, or hit me up on Twitter and DMs. They're open, and we can maybe get a YouTube fantasy football league started. But Jeff, everybody's been doing all these amazing gifts to each other. I've got some good news of gifts, like a gift back to Seahawks fans, especially to Hawk Blogger fans. So we have one of our first sponsors going on for the show. And I'm just double checking I've got the right numbers here before I announce. But let's see. I should have had this in front of me, but 1 second. Yes, there it is. Okay. So, Jeff, Aaron Schatz, godfather of DVOA.
Yeah.
He has brought DVOA and all that data to FTN Fantasy. They've now launched Stats Hub, and it's crazy, dude. It has how teams perform against cover 1, cover 0, cover 2, in the rain, in the wind, like every specific split you can imagine. Plus, it's got all this fantasy information. They're going to be a sponsor of Hawk Blogger Mornings, and they are granting everybody a 15% off subscription for the FTN stats hub, all you got to do is enter promo code HAWKS, HAWKS, and you'll get 15% off your subscription at FTN. We are also going to be having a member of the FTN crew, Mike Randall, come on every Tuesday to break down fantasy football starts, sits, all that kind of stuff throughout the season. More to come there, but guys, this is I think the best data on the web for football. Like, they just launched it this year. It is a great deal. You can get 15% off additionally for being a Hawk Blogger Mornings listener. So promo code HAWKS, enjoy that, and we'll give you a lot more to come there. So those are the two announcements. We'll have a lot more on that. But dude, I was playing around with the stats hub today, and it's like, it's mind-boggling how much data is in there.
That's crazy.
I mean, honestly, there are systems like SIS, Sports Info Solutions.
Yeah,
it is thousands. Like, it can be $5,000 or $6,000 a year to get this kind of stats. FTN's giving it to you for like $100, $200, whatever it is. I have to look back at it, but it's very affordable, especially when you take 15% off. So, I mean, if you're a geek like us, then this is a no-brainer and really cool. So make sure you use promo code HAWKS and get your 15% off. All right. So let's get back to that conversation. I wrote this article and I named it something that was really like geeky. I couldn't think of a better name, but really the name of the article was The High End of Variance. And what was going through my head, Jeff, was you and I had these conversations multiple times before training camp of what would be, if you could pick one thing, if you could pick two things, you could pick three things to happen, what would they be? That would be like a really good sign for the Seahawks. Do you remember what your like 1, 2, or 3 things were before training camp that you wanted to see happen?
I would have guessed Byron Murphy becomes star. Witherspoon hit the next level. And I think like linebacker having a solution. That would have been one of them.
Almost. Those were all in the list. For you, I was going to go back and clip this so we could play it back to each other, but Christian Haynes becoming a starter was like, I think, big. Top of your list. Then Byron Murphy, and then I think Charles Cross might have been up there as well for you.
Yeah, I stand by those originals.
And I think those are spot on. So I kind of wrote about it, and you tell me, because you are more grounded than I am at this time of year, especially. Is it just me, or does it feel like the things that we need, the questions that we needed to answer, seem like they're all being answered in the positive for the most part?
Yeah, that's why that article hit me so hard, square in the eyes, and that's got me into the fields for sure. Because the most exciting thing about their development so far in the preseason is, again, are the blue chip players there? Byron Murphy's getting like national conversation. I don't know if you heard Daniel Jeremiah talk about him. He covered the game. Chris Long was raving about him. Like, you couldn't all watch that game and just see everything we need to see. I know he started camp a little bit slow, so that was a little rough to start, but he's been flashing ever since the Pat game's on. Witherspoon, just every time I see more and more of him, like, I'm in love with this guy. Like, that pick was so controversial at the time. Everyone wanted Jalen Carter. The fact that they ended up with maybe as good of a player as Jalen Carter and the ability to get Byron Murphy after, like, to get both of them. And Haynes is on the last week or so. Really, I think he looked really solid in the game. And he's starting to get first team reps this week. And it sounded like he did pretty well at the joint practice. So it does not sound like Anthony Bradford's had a very inspiring camp so far. And Charles Cross, everyone has been at camp. I haven't seen it personally. I just haven't play in the preseason game. I haven't been at camp. Obviously, you have. But obviously, one of the biggest developments of the year is, and you saw Mike Clay put out his positional rankings and had the Seahawks offensive line ranked 32nd. I didn't think that was fair, but I think he kind of misses. He really relies on PFF grades, and like he had Nick Harris as the Seahawks starting center. He's not even on the team anymore. So either way, just from a perception point, Seahawks need building blocks on the offensive line. I think their defensive line is positioned to be really well. We know they have good players. The big things for us is the big things I'm looking at all year are three things. Is Mike McDonald the guy? I've loved everything I've seen from him. I think I wasn't even high enough on him. He's more impressive than I thought. 2, are Murphy and Witherspoon the guys? So far, they absolutely look like it. Obviously, we need to see it in the games, but that's it. And then 3, can guys emerge on the O-line? And so far, and that was even before I factored in. We never even would have thought about Connor Williams. So it's been a really encouraging preseason, and it's cool to see those 3 things. And then I mentioned the linebacker thing. Tyrese Knight is starting to show that he's not a disaster, and we don't know how good he is. People interpreted that quote a lot of different ways this week. I saw it as a positive. So I think there's just a lot of positive things going on right now with the Seahawks.
Tell me about what you said. Mike McDonald's even better than you thought. Why? What's better than you thought?
As a rookie head coach, to be this much in command, to see him be this much, like seeing the preseason game and how technically sound they were and how clean it was and how all the last few years we've watched him tackle in the preseason and it's been so bad. And it just seems like anytime I hear him talk and I see the messages being passed, and it's like you would always hear players be like, oh, Shane Waldron's a genius, and you would just never see it in the game. It's just, I knew McDonald had special potential, and you heard about how good of a teacher he was and the staff he's put together. But like, if you heard Matt Hasselbeck talk around this guy, and he met him at the joint practices this week, he was on 710 talking, and just, it's everyone who seems to get around this guy is kind of just blown away. And it is, and the comparison Ian Rappaport or Garoppolo made at the time when they hired him was this guy is Sean McVay. He's just on defense. And that preseason game was a real eye-opener to me because I've watched other teams play in the preseason. I've watched the Seahawks play in the preseason. They're a struggle. They're a hard watch. If you watch some of the games today, it's hard. But it just seems like I thought there'd be a big learning curve, and that was my real hesitation all year. He seems just way ahead of schedule. He's way more in command and way more comfortable with himself. And I don't know if it's just his ability as a teacher, but I knew he was a good coordinator. You never know if someone will be as a head coach, and he just seems to be crushing it.
Yeah, I think, and credit to his coaching staff, which is credit to him as well. I mean, I've been watching those guys doing their teaching. We've talked about it, and I don't know if you feel this way, Jeff, but this is a little bit hyperbolic, but I'll just say the way that the second string played in that Chargers game felt to me roughly equivalent, maybe even better than some of the way we've seen the starters play for the Seahawks in preseason the past few years. Like, it was crisp, it was productive, and the talent, it's not just the coaching, the talent's just also deeper. You did not have Byron Murphy, as a second string guy, or Christian Haynes as a second string guy to come in there and make a difference. I think we talk about the draft picks. I think McClendon Curtis and Raekwon O'Neal are worthy of call outs as well. McClendon Curtis has had some rough plays as a right tackle, but I'm telling you, I think he's a pretty qualified guard. And Raekwon O'Neal had some good plays. And Jeff, he's been taking snaps at center. And if he plays well at center today, I think there's a chance Olu may not be safe on this roster.
Wow. Yeah, Olu certainly is not. Not a great preseason. Not a great training camp so far. They felt they had to replace one of the centers. And yeah, I didn't see much from Olu in the preseason game where I thought he's, other than just being drafted last year, haven't seen much. And yeah, there's someone who's better than him. And if you're a center-only player that can't play guard, it's going to be interesting. And I think that's something to watch because Connor Williams is going to play. I don't think most of the Seahawks starters are going to play tonight. But
right.
Yeah, other than Oluwatimi being drafted 5th round last year, which is usually not a position, that's a pretty low hit rate in the 5th round.
Mm-hmm.
Other than just like his status within the fan base, because we were all convinced he was kind of outlined to be the starter. Yeah, I don't think he's safe. I think he's going to have to play. I think he's going to have to earn that.
Yeah, which is good. But I mean, this is what I'm talking about, the high end of variance, in that was a position that is not going as well as you would have wanted. Olu didn't step forward the way you would have hoped. Nick Harris was not playing great. But then Connor Williams falls into your lap. And so it's like, sometimes you just need to be lucky, and like things just need to kind of fall into your lap like that. And I mean, we can go through the list, but Reek Woolen clearly has taken a step forward. Devin Witherspoon looks ready to be the same player he was, if not better. Safeties look like they're going to be good. Julian Love has been playing really well. Kayvon Wallace has been playing well. Tyrese Knight looks like a guy that is going to be, starter quality player, if not this year, soon after. Derek Hall looks like he's taken a step forward. Uchenna Nwosu's healthy. I mean, there's just not a lot to be down about with the way things are progressing so far, knock on wood, but that's nice. And I mean, you talked about the Mike Clay, or is it Mike Clay?
Yeah, Mike Clay.
Positional rankings for ESPN. I mean, the Seahawks being at number 2 for interior defensive line is, I mean, I don't think that's crazy, dude. I think people are going to start waking up to just how talented that defensive line is. And I think I would say it is likely that the Seahawks are going to take over for best defensive line in the NFC West over the 49ers. I think that's, with their depth and their rotation, I think they're going to be better than the 49ers defensive line.
Yeah, Murphy's flashed so much, we almost don't talk about Leonard Williams. And Leonard Williams was like $20 million player. He's never really been he's been like the borderline Pro Bowl level player. And he was probably their best player in the second half of the season last year. He almost goes like untalked about because everyone's so excited about Murphy as the new toy. But man, like we've seen those great defensive tackle duos over the years and what that can do to a defense. And Reed and Hankins are just pros. Like to have those guys as like third and fourth defensive tackles is awesome. And yeah, just like I remember like Jacksonville used to have a defense with John Henderson and Marcus Stroud. And this was like over 10 years ago. But like they were so hard to play against because of those two guys. And you've talked more than anyone with the impact of defensive tackles. Like when the Bucs went to the Super Bowl a few years ago and they had Sue and Vita Vea in the middle of their defense, it just made the whole thing operate differently. And I don't think anyone has close to the defensive tackle talent Seattle has. The fact that Murphy's come out, and I saw Jeremiah tweet this, like, you better get ready for playing this guy. And we saw how the Rams viewed him. Everyone should have seen that clip by now or read about it. The Rams said there's no one like this guy in the draft. They tried to trade up ahead of the Seahawks. They knew Seattle wanted him. There's no defensive tackle. They have good player. Kobe Turner is a good player.
Mm-hmm.
Fisk, I don't think Murphy. I think they looked at Murphy as a totally different level. And I think they realized. And the fact that the guy got a triple team in his first game, the clip going on the internet of him getting tripled by the Chargers. Like, you never want to compare anyone to Aaron Donald, and I don't think he's Aaron Donald, because Aaron Donald's the best player I've ever seen. But we've seen what that kind of player can do. And, yeah, I think Seattle's defensive line, especially if Mafe and Hall can hit. Like, Mafe, we saw have a streak where he looked really good. I think Chenna's going to be really solid. I know, like, Mina has been really tough on the edge group. I think the edge group is fine. I don't think they're elite or close to it, but I think they're competent. And especially in this defense, which elevated edge, that were, like, Clowney and Van Noy were totally fine in this defense. I don't think our talent is all that different. So I think the scheme can really elevate the edge players, and I think the deep tackles are just really that good. I'm with you. I think their defensive line has the potential to be the dominant unit of this team.
Yeah, I've started to have this this modifier for Mike McDonald because he likes to kind of be muted with his praise of players. When he says something positive, I kind of turn it up like 10 on the volume knob. And so when he has been clear up until this week that the edge rushers have, like, they're still working on it. He's like, they're still developing their timing. They're still figuring it out. He said this week, I was pleased with the edge rush from the first unit. He said that similarly with coming out of the first preseason game. I was pleased with the way we got pressure on the edge. They're very, like, monotone statements. But for him and the standard that he's setting to say that he's pleased with that is noteworthy. And I think it means, like, these guys are starting to take the right steps. And I think of all the parts of that defense, that might take That might be the one that like middle of the season, second half of the season starts to really hit as they start to really get a feel for what works and what doesn't. So it might not start off super fast on the edge, but I think that they've got some guys that are working toward it. And I can tell you, McDonald has challenged those guys in practice. I've heard some things I can't share, but like he's not afraid to go up to a guy that is well known and be like, you gonna make a play today? You know, like, and I think he's gonna set a high bar. So I think that's awesome. I do want to get another amazingly generous donation here. Jesse Dunn has gifted 10 memberships. Unbelievable. So great to see the community really contributing overall and bringing in more people. This is my favorite thing that people do, Jeff, because not only does it benefit the show, but it benefits all the people that want to be part of this community, and you know, more and more people. And we're going to be able to start doing things like for post-game shows, we'll do members only chat. So we don't have to worry about 49ers fans or other jerks coming in here. But if you're a member, you'll be able to be part of the post-game show, and that'll just be how it works. So we'll do other members only stuff as well. And this just allows more and more people to be part of that, which is cool. So knowing that a lot of the starters aren't going to play today, what are some of the things you care about in this game? What would be good news in this game?
Obviously, I'm going to be focusing on a lot of the rookies. Christian Haynes, I think, is going to probably get some pretty good snaps, maybe with the first team tonight. I want to see how he looks because I was really encouraged what I saw last game. He reminded me a lot as a prospect of like Shaq Mason. He was never the flashiest player, but just really steady. Didn't make a lot of mistakes. Plus player, never like an all-pro, but maybe he was. But he's been just really steady. I want to see Knight play more. I want to see how Tyrese Knight bounces back. And again, the quote that got a lot of attention was McDonald kind of what I thought was trying to keep him grounded, where he's just like, well, he played well, but we told him he's 3 years away. He's not quite there yet. I want to see how he bounces back from that. So I'm really curious to see how he does. I'm guessing Byron Murphy's going to play a little bit. I'm just hoping he plays a little and doesn't get injured. I don't want anything to happen to Byron Murphy. I'd be okay with giving him a bit of a rest. I want to see how some of these receivers play. I was really excited to see like what Laviska Shenault was doing and Tariq Young. I thought those two guys looked really good. But George Halani was a guy. He played so well. He got a Brian Baldinger video. I think that was the only Seahawks that got one.
Yeah, stop there for a second. I mean, I have been kind of out on a limb on my take on the Seahawks running backs. There's a lot of folks that really liked what they saw from Kenny McIntosh. He was a leading rusher, caught a bunch of passes. Halani had the touchdown. What did you see from those two guys?
I thought Halani was really just solid, and he just did everything right. His blocking was good. He ran the right routes. He looked powerful. He looked like the classic Seahawk Pete Carroll kind of running back. He was really steady. I was really impressed with him. He just looked like a pro, and he did everything quite well. I thought McIntosh looked a little quicker than I saw last year, but once he didn't look like he was breaking tackles very well, and he didn't look like once he got to contact. But then someone like Advanced Stats came out, and he was like the best yards after contact runner in the whole league last week. And my eyes told me something completely different. Once he got hit, he kind of just went down. He didn't have the physical strength. And it seems like the coaching staff viewed it similar. It seemed like Kalani's getting better snaps than McIntosh this week. So I thought McIntosh looked a little quick when there was a hole, but I was more impressed with Halani. I want to see him play. He looked like a fine, and he was a guy you liked even before camp.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's going to be a lot of rookies. There's not a lot of second string depth players I'm not interested in. It's mostly the young guys. I want to see how the corners look. But I'm hoping just most of the key guys aren't playing. It's mostly rookies.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of them. I mean, I think the Christian Haynes news is big, dude. He was not trending in that direction early in camp. Anthony Bradford actually started out camp pretty well. I think he's regressed back to a little bit looking like the guy he was last year. And that to me, there's nothing else that would be bigger. If Christian Haynes can play a good game. And I think the biggest thing for Christian Haynes is how solid he can be in pass protection today would be the biggest thing to watch. But the reason is because I think he is certain to be someone who can get push in the run game. And so that's what I want to see. But if he can solidify that spot, Jeff, I feel so much better about him than Anthony Bradford. Like Anthony Bradford, super strong, like we were excited about when they drafted him last year, but he's really got some of the Jermaine Ifedi level pass protection issues where he's just not consistent. He's like, he loses balance. Guys get around him, and as much as he can be a physical ass kicker at a guard, as a run blocker, I think he's a liability as a pass protector. I think Christian Haynes can be just a much better all-around guard. I don't even need him to be a Pro Bowl guy, but can he just be a good guard that you're happy to have there and you don't have to worry about him being a total target for the opponents week in, week out?
Yeah, and adding to the Bradford thing, like I don't know if you've seen a lot, but Laken Tomlinson was obviously a guy who played pretty terrible last year. And I'm sure everyone saw the video of my namesake, Jeffrey Simmons, like tossing him like a rag doll. Thompson had a really rough year with the Jets last year where there was a lot of clips of just him on the ground. And he hasn't really played well since early years with the Jets. So I'm pretty skeptical about Thompson. I still think that's the area of the team I'm less. If you have him at left guard and Bradford at right guard, I am not going to be comfortable. And Haynes emerging would be a big deal. Because like you said, like we don't need Haynes to be Zach Martin year one. What the Seahawks need is just steady play in the interior of their line. Connor Williams, even if he's not the same player as last year, I don't think he's going to be like a total disaster. I think even in his lower variant scenarios, he's still at least a solid center.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a solid center, a solid right guard, and George Fant, we know can be a functional player till Lucas gets back. It's really that left guard spot. So I really would like to see Haynes emerge at the right guard spot. I think it just ups the floor of the team. I think the idea of them being the 32nd O-line, if three of those guys, if you have Williams, Cross, and Haynes in there, I think that's really unlikely. And with Bradford and Tomlinson, if that's your starting, I'm nervous every single game.
I talked about this on the show yesterday, I think. Maybe it's the day before, but I got to say, like that Tomlinson clip, I'm not nearly as worried about it as other people are. I've watched him in 1v1s all camp. He's fine. He's fine. Like he really is. Like, is he going to be the Pro Bowl player that he was with the 49ers? Probably not. But is he going to be a totally viable starter that you just don't notice most times? I think so. Like, I think that's who he's going to be. And he's also a vet, steadying force in there. And I think people are overreacting to that clip. And
oh yeah, just because of how bad it looked, it's just easy to.
It was a bad look, but like,
yeah,
if Geno Smith, Connor Williams, and Ryan Grubb design a blocking scheme and protection that has Jeffrey Simmons 1v1 with Laken Tomlinson, then guess what? You deserve what you get. But that's not how it's going to be. I mean, you don't do that. So I'm not worried about Tomlinson. I think he could be better than people think. Bradford, for me, is just a little bit. He's obviously much younger. You got less on him, and the things that he was deficient in last year, he seems to still be deficient in. And so that's different than a guy that has been really good and is a veteran, has played a lot of snaps, that you have some questions about whether he's still as good as he used to be. That's just a very different level of risk. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't care that Mike K has got the Seahawks as the 32nd ranked offensive line. I mean, they have not earned anything higher than that for years. But I agree with you that could change quite a bit depending on how things play out. And I think the Christian Haynes thing today is one of the biggest ones. I think the running back's another big one. And then, I mean, I'm a little different. I want to see Byron Murphy today. I hope they do play Byron Murphy today.
You're probably right, but
I want to see him ragdoll some people, man.
Oh, it was the best part of last week. He might start tonight.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have that many defensive tackles to play, so I hope he gets some time, but who knows? I mean, one of the things that gives you hope is that if you're hoping he plays, is Mike McDonald talks about reps all the time. He's like, reps are how you get better. I think he's wanted the young guys to get reps. So hopefully Murphy plays. We do have another new member, CP Mortimer. Welcome to the crew, CP, man. Great to have you. Thank you for joining and supporting the show. You mentioned Laviska Shenault. So talk to me about that, man. I mean, obviously we've talked about him a bit, but I'm curious, like, what's your take on him?
I like him, man. I like him. I think the Seahawks have a lot of vertical receivers in their offense. I think they have a lot. I think Lockett and DK. One of the things that I hated last year is they tried to make JSN the horizontal receiver at the line of scrimmage. It's just not him. And seeing how he's been used in camp and seeing some of those clips that came out of Tennessee, he's the middle of the field, just like Julian Edelman, Cooper Kupp. Like, I think that's how JSN should be used. I love the way the Rams used to use Robert Woods, and teams have used the horizontal weapon, and I think it does create a lot of mismatch, and especially in the kicking game. The way he runs, he's more the what Eskridge was supposed to be, the powerful run, all that stuff. I think it completes the package, because DK, for his size and speed, has never been that kind of player. He's never been great breaking tackles. Tyler Lockett kind of goes down at any sign of contact now, and I don't blame him. I might be doing that too to survive. But I think Shenault, and that's what he was at Colorado. He was not but the reason he struggled where he was drafted, he's not a great route runner. He didn't hit in Jacksonville for that reason. But in a very specialized role, and really why we thought Eskridge made sense to complement these guys initially, although they screwed that pick up. But I liked what I saw from him. He looked powerful. He looked in command. I think in the kicking game, he's going to be a really good weapon. So Jacksonville, they really asked him to be a slot receiver, which is a horrible fit for him. I think in this role, he's an excellent fit. And I think that was a pretty crafty signing if they're going to have, and they did a lot of that stuff with Grubb in Washington. So I really liked what I saw.
I think that he just was going to add to, he and Derek Young together, I think could be a sneaky Swiss Army knife in the depth chart for that receiver room. I don't think either one of them are guys that you want to be in number 1 or number 2 or even really number 3 roles.
No, I don't agree.
But I think that they're guys that you can get a few sub packages for that end up being really valuable throughout a season. And then the other guy that everyone already knows, but I still think is being underestimated, is Jake Bobo.
I just forgot about him.
Right?
I literally just forgot about it.
He's in this void between the clear starters and the depth guys. But if you saw some of the best highlights from that joint practice this week was Jake Bobo just sunning the Titans corners. I mean, making one-handed catches, over the top catches. I think this guy's going to be a big part of the offense, and I think I expect him to get a decent number of snaps today. Well, we'll see. Maybe not. Maybe he's so solidified they won't. But
I think he will.
He's a really good player, man. He's I know it's a little lazy saying Joe Jurevicius, but he just reminds me of him. He's a good blocker. He's tall. He's not the most athletic, but he's really strong at the point of the catch. Who's another player that you'd put into that category that's not Joe J?
The Joe Jurevicius season with the Seahawks in 2005 is one of my favorite individual.
Yeah.
You know what? The Mike Williams in 2010 was also one of my favorite seasons. It was kind of a similar season where they just had that guy that can win on any route. He was big and strong, not that fast. I'm trying to think of another player like that. I have to think of it, but he's just he's off. Jake Bobo's not fast, but he runs routes really well. He can make leaping catches. He's got really good body control. His hands are might have the best hands on the team. And there's always room for a guy. I got to apologize if he's listening to this. I did forget about him in that last going through the receivers. And I think he's a guy who will play a lot tonight. I think these are the kind of games that they're going to want to give him reps. And I think they're going to have to eventually replace Tyler Lockett. And Bobo is a guy who's now, if he can carry over what he did last year, that's a potential internal growth thing that they can have him there to be that outside receiver. So, yeah, there are definitely a bunch of players that were like him. I just can't think of any top of mind. But unfortunately, because of his speed, he's going to always get compared to a white guy. Not the deceptive speed like a Julian Edelman or a Amendola,
Right.
but he ran like what 4.99 40. Like he's
Right.
always going to be compared to the white guy that can jump and run good reds. And not there's anything wrong with that, but he compares it.
Yeah, he's not going to be. It would be silly to compare him to Deshaun Jackson. Like that's not
No.
who he is, or Tyreek
There's
Hill.
a guy named
He's
like
not
Drew
that.
Bennett on Tennessee that was kind of like him,
Yeah.
or Kevin Curtis was a guy
Yeah.
on the Lions and the Eagles.
And Mike Williams is a decent, like, reasonable compare. Mike Williams is a little bit more of a physical,
but he was so
intimidating
big.
presence.
Like,
Yeah,
Mike
he
Williams was like
monstrous.
the number one recruit in the whole country. Like,
Yeah. So I've got a bit of a prediction for you for tonight, dude.
okay.
I think the name of you. Actually, we're gonna do it this way. I'll give everyone, including you, 3 guesses of who I'm gonna say is going to be the player of the game on offense tonight for the Seahawks. 3 guesses, knowing the starters aren't gonna play. Who am I gonna say is gonna be the breakout player of the game?
George
Chat,
Lonnie.
you can guess 2.
Let's go with Brady Russell.
Brady Russell's number 1. Okay, I'll tell you at the end if you nailed any of them.
George Holani.
George Holani, that's another good guess. What's your 3rd guess? Laviska. Those are 3 excellent guesses. And any one of those I see in chat, we've got Haynes. That's a good guess. Derek Young. Aesop, that's a fantastic guess.
Ooh, that's a good guess.
Yep, another Aesop guess. I'll let a couple more people guess, and then I will reveal if you got the actual guy. Sam Howell, that's a good guess. Jake Bobo. All right, here's the reality. None of those players. The guy that I am predicting, AJ Barner, another guess from Pork Chop, one of our new members today. Hayden Hatton.
Really?
Hayden Hatton. Watch out for Hayden Hatton today, receiver out of Idaho. He's going to get plenty of run. He did not get as much run last week. I think that guy's going to catch. He might be the leading receiver today. That's my call.
That's exciting. Well, he was a guy, a lot of like the UDFA guys that I follow on Twitter were very eager. And some people have mentioned he's looked good at times, but I haven't heard much about him in camp. So
he's had a good camp. The fact of the matter is that position is so friggin' deep.
He's blocked. How does he get reps?
He's so deep. It's so deep, but he's got fantastic hands. He's made a number of really nice catches. He's great at high pointing the ball. I see Jacob Ray here as Cody White. That's another great call. Cody White's had a fantastic camp. That guy, I saw him catching off the jugs machine for 20 minutes, 30 minutes after practice last week. Well, not this past week, the week. Well, yeah, it was Monday. It was Monday. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that guy's got a lot of respect in that room. But with D. Eskridge not playing because he's hurt again, I think Hatton will get some more reps, and I think he's going to make some big plays. So that's a guy to watch that no one else will tell you about, but I will. Another name that we haven't talked about for a while who won't play tonight, but I forgot was on PUP, and I think they're just going to stash him there, is Cameron Young.
I forgot about him.
Right?
Too. Yeah, like we always paired him and Mike Morris together, and you've seen Mike Morris do a lot of cool stuff. Like that playing coverage last week was maybe the hardest play of the game. That was insane.
Crazy. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, and then the Gotel was getting some time. Gotel got injured. He got waived. So, yeah, I think that he makes sense. Don't show anything in the preseason. They probably need the depth. As for young guys, they have 2 older players there. Yeah, I would probably keep him on the injured list.
I think we'll get to see Drake Thomas for the first time today. He came off PUP this week. And Jeff, I hadn't really had eyes on Drake Thomas before. This guy has got like some serious legs on him, man. It's not quite Derek Hall level legs, but he's an interesting looking athlete, and I bet he's got some speed to him. I'm looking forward to seeing if he pops today. He's a name that obviously no one's mentioned and was kind of coming into camp. People thought, hey, maybe he'll challenge for a roster spot. He's a great special teams player, but he's a guy that I'm really curious to see at inside linebackers this week.
So he really flashed last year, but he was not on the Seahawks, if everyone remembers. He was on the Raiders last year. And during their preseason games, he was one of the best players on their entire defense. I don't know what a PFF grade or anything like that was, but I remember when he didn't make the team. And my brother's a Raiders fan, so I see some Raiders stuff on Twitter. They were devastated, their fans. And the beat writers were shocked. And then the Seahawks got him, and a lot of his highlights were coming up. And like he was like the flashiest guy for the Raiders for anyone last year at their team. So we haven't seen him play a preseason game as a Seahawk. He didn't play last week. We got him after the preseason. So, yeah, he's a guy that for defense could be really interesting because there hasn't been a lot of guys we've seen the last couple of years that have really flashed. And I thought John Radigan looked good last game.
He did.
We've been so like, oh, John Radigan better not play. And I remember you were excited about him in his first year.
Yes, because he looked like he'd looked last week.
He looked big and fast.
Yeah.
I had not remember. Well, maybe because he was coming off that injury, he did not look fast last year.
No, he wasn't.
Fast, dude. He Jeremiah. I don't know if you saw the Chargers broadcast. I had that on my local TV. They kept talking about the speed of the Seahawks defensive linebacker, and that was when Radigan and Knight were in. And like that was the fastest I've seen him look. He looked like a bullet.
He did, and I mean that play where he almost got the safety.
Yeah,
we watched that on with Big Ray, the Big Ray's rewind on Wednesday, and I thought of that as the John Radigan play, but it was the Byron Murphy play. And part of the reason the linebackers look so fast is because the defensive line is taking up every friggin' blocker. There were two guys blocking Byron Murphy, and there was nobody blocking John Radigan or Tyrese Knight on that play. Earlier, that was the play where Tyrell Dodson, manned up and just smacked a guy running back in the hole. That looked like the Tyrell Dodson play. But if you watch the replay, it was a Jaron Reed and Boye Mafe play primarily because they funneled him back toward Dodson. So when you got linebackers that have nobody blocking them, no traffic for them to get through, guess what? They kind of get from point A to point B a little bit faster, and they look a little bit faster. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, and the thing I hated the most about this scheme the last few years is just how bad the defensive line. I don't know if that was like the Vic Fangio scheme or just Clint Hurtt poorly executing it or the players not being good enough. But really, after they moved on from Norden and they brought in this Fangio stuff, the defensive line they had was so bad at eating up blocks, and it made the linebackers look embarrassing. And like Quandre Diggs was left in space trying to tackle people. They were awful at it. Everyone was like freaking out when they didn't sign Al Woods back. And like Poona Ford and Al Woods were their starting DTs in those defenses. This defense is the opposite. The Ravens defense lives by a defensive tackle. Murphy falling to them is still unbelievable. But they talked about building the run wall, and this is why. It opens up so many things. And watching the linebackers, if you watch Bobby and KJ and Jordan Brooks in the last few years just getting thrown around by offensive linemen, that was what was so refreshing about this game. They looked like how the Michigan defense looks, where their linebackers are just flying. And the speed of their defense, that was what comes out from having great play. So having defensive tackle depth, having defensive tackle upper echelon talent, it has such an impact on the rest of the defense. And just seeing those linebackers fly around an area that everyone does think is a problem area, I think that's something to watch if that shows up again tonight.
I see a lot of folks asking about Pharaoh Brown. There was a report that he got carted off. People were saying it was a knee, and then Mike McDonald said it was a foot, but didn't have much more information. I don't have any new news on that. I don't know. Like, if it was serious, I feel like maybe we would have heard something by now, but don't know. And I'm not going to speculate, but beyond that, I haven't heard anything else. Jeff, have you heard anything else?
No, I haven't heard anything. I thought he looked really solid last week too as a blocker. So I was a little discouraged because that would bump up Barner pretty heavy, and then he would have to be the primary blocking tight, him and Brady Russell. And I think Pharaoh Brown is a really good pro blocker. So I'm hoping everything's okay. There's no way he'll play tonight. So hopefully it's not a serious injury, but no, I haven't heard anything.
A couple other guys, Jeff. You have a few more minutes?
I got time.
Okay. A couple other guys that I think are going to have like pretty important games for them tonight. So I'll list a few. AJ Barner, you just mentioned. I think he has not played well yet. I think it's an important game. He's going to get, I think, a lot of snaps. Noah Fant's not going to play. Pharaoh Brown's not going to play. So Barner's going to get a lot of run. I think that's a big one. I think that Patrick O'Connell, a big game for him. We talked about Drake Thomas. And then I think Darrell Taylor might get his first run. I think it's a big game for him, a big game for Nelson Caesar. And then the cornerback room, there's a lot going on there. There's questions in chat about, is Mike Jackson a trade candidate? I mean, I talked about that on my show, I think yesterday. I do think he is someone who could be a trade candidate. I think he's going to play. He didn't play in the first preseason game. DJ James and Nehemiah Pritchett. I have James ahead of Pritchett right now on my roster. Carlton Johnson's had a pretty good camp, worth just keeping an eye on. Carlton Johnson, for people that don't know, again, undrafted free agent out of Fresno State, ran a 4.28 40. 4.28. He is incredibly fast. The issue is he's like 175 pounds. So he's a smaller dude, and that's part of why he didn't get drafted. But he's had a good camp. And then Ty Okada has been playing really well. And one of the things I'm wondering about, Jeff, I've got them only keeping 4 safeties, and I've got Kobe Bryant being, I think he's definitely ahead of Okada on that list. But there's a chance they could end up keeping 5 safeties and maybe trimming at corner or trimming somewhere else. So those are some of the guys that kind of like, I think the Darrell Taylor one, especially if he's going against backups, man, that guy better show out today.
Yeah, I heard he had a couple sacks in Tennessee practice, but we really haven't heard much from him. And Draymond Jones has been up and down with injuries, mostly down. So he hasn't got a chance to play. So really there are potential reps for Taylor to have. And he needs to start flashing. Like the last 2 years, the way he played against the run was so discouraging. It's really just, I think you've said on other shows, just his view from the Seahawks fans are just, he's got a very negative perception. And so in terms of like pure speed rushing, he is the best player on the roster in terms of like pure speed rush, explosive talent. And we saw it in flashes his first year playing. We saw a really good second year, and then some times at the end of the third year. But this is a big year for him. He needs to earn his way on this team. And yeah, this is the kind of game against Tennessee's backup O-line. I can't imagine it's very good. Like their offensive line was the worst in the NFL. They would have been 32 last year. They invested a top 10 pick in it. So he better flat. Nelson Caesar's a name I haven't heard almost anything about as a guy I thought might bump him off the roster. So yeah, this is the kind of game where he's going to need to start showing something. Because again, my perception of him just from the last 2 years is pretty low.
Yeah. I mean, he needs to start, showing something in these moments. And I just don't think it's crazy that someone else, like he could be playing to catch the attention of another team as well. I do think he's, with $3 million not guaranteed, he could be a guy that's traded. If people didn't see earlier, I want to remind you, you can get 15% off Stats Hub at ftnfantasy.com using promo code HAWKS. Highly recommend it. The stats there, I'm just starting to like scratch the surface of. There's been so many times I've been jealous, Jeff, of guys being able to look at, okay, how does Geno play in the rain? How does Purdy play with wind? How do these teams handle different coverages? There's so much there, and it's the only place where you can get DVOA and DYAR for every player. And you can get it for 15% off if you use promo code HAWK. So highly recommend joining over there at FTN Fantasy. And again, if you're interested in being part of the Fantasy Football League, you got to be a patron, patreon.com/HawkBlogger. Otherwise, for YouTube members, we can see about potentially doing something there, but we'll need someone to volunteer to be the commissioner and run it all. So let me know. You can shoot me a note, and we'll see about organizing that. All right, Jeff, what am I missing around the NFL? Like this is always your bailiwick. What are things, storylines that we haven't talked about that are on your mind?
Well, I don't know what we missed, but I got like 8 text messages saying like Caleb Williams is unreal. So I don't know what happened while we were on the air. But and I thought Evan just posted something in the group. So that's been a talk a lot. I refuse to acknowledge the Brandon Ayuk story. I will not give that story any more airtime. So that's been big. Interesting stuff from Seahawks opponents this week. JJ McCarthy is out for the season. It's going to be Sam Darnold there. The Falcons had some high-profile additions. I don't know how good they actually are at this point of their career, but they surprisingly paid a third-round pick for Matt Judon and signed Justin Simmons. So I think they're a little tighter on defense, but I don't think it really changes. I don't think it moves the needle that much. But, man, there's been a lot of buzz out of Denver. And I don't know if I'm just a little, like, getting nervous because it's our first week game. I don't know if it's just – I feel like Denver reporters – I think Evan was joking about it, that, like, Denver is kind of like the new 49ers. And there's that one account that every year just is like, what if, like, we have a new friend, we're going to own the Seahawks. So, like, have you seen any of this? Like, Bo Nix looked pretty decent in the preseason last week. Apparently, they whooped Green Bay yesterday. It was one of the, like, low-key Super Bowl contenders in their joint practice. Like, do you feel it's just preseason nonsense? Like, or is there something there with Sean Payton?
I mean, I will say this. Sean Payton's a very good offensive coach. Bo Nix is a fine quarterback. I've never thought he was bad, but I don't think he's excellent. And fine. They've got Cortland Sutton as their best receiver. Like, their offensive line is challenged. It's hard for me to believe there's anything powerful being built on the offensive side of the ball this year with that team. And I don't know if you ever listened to, there's a Football 301 podcast with Nate Tice.
Yeah, I do.
And I was listening to that yesterday, and they just went through and just bit by bit picked apart why Bo Nix's performance was so much less impressive than what everyone thought it was, and why there was sign after sign that this is not going to work out well. And that one of the things they kept saying was, even if they're trying to design this offense to be like Sean Payton's offense in like 2017 with Drew Brees, that was when they had to do that kind of offense because Drew Brees was losing steam, and Drew Brees had 200 starts as a Hall of Fame level player by that point. Bo Nix, like, he's 24, and is he going to really grow into much? I don't know. And so I'm kind of with them. I'm not too worried about it. And I'm also not just too worried about most guys right now against this Seahawks defense. I think the Seahawks defense is going to be ready to play. I think it's going to be very tough to go against. And you put Tariq Woolen on Cortland Sutton, I think it zeroes out that offense. I don't know who else they're going to be passing the ball to. So yeah, I'm not overly concerned. But we'll see. I'm looking at the box score, dude. Caleb Williams is 6 of 13 for 75 yards and no touchdowns, and has one rush for 7 yards and one touchdown.
Yeah, what did we miss?
I think people are just like, they're just eager to crown the guy.
Well, like, he's the kind of guy that, like, if you're just not watching preseason, you see his highlights, he's gonna have the nicest highlights of any player.
Right.
But if you like, it's sort of like McCarthy and Nix, and you see the highlights, and it's probably one of the biggest problems with Twitter now. You just see these one clips, and everyone's quick to judge these guys. And so there must have been some sort of incredible highlight, because I hate text message.
I mean, it really is odd because Tyson Bagent, their backup, is 5 of 6 for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. Caleb Williams averaged less than 6 yards a pass. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure there's anything he could do that makes me think, oh my God, this guy's amazing, other than exactly what you just said, which is what we talked about. He's a highlight machine. He can make these off-script crazy plays, but can he run a consistently threatening offense? I haven't seen it yet. I will say Travis Homer has 4 carries for 3 yards.
It looked like Rome Odunze had a 45-yard catch, so it must have been like a deep bomb or something.
Yeah, he did have his 1 catch for 45 yards. So
we'll have to catch this clip, but
yes,
I'm not going to talk about Brandon Ayuk.
Not going to talk about Ayuk. I won't make you talk about Ayuk. I mean, what about the Falcons? What do you take about the Falcons adding Judon and Simmons? What's your take?
It just seems like they're an organization with no direction. I know if their window was to win now, why did they draft Byron Murphy? And I think they're just a team that they run their operation. I still think they're just what happened. Did you see something?
Sorry, I just saw something. That was very rude of me, but I was looking around for our next topic. I just looked at the Giants Texans box score. You want to know Daniel Jones' stat line?
Yes.
11 for 18, 138 yards. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
And one of them was a pick six. And one
I
of the
mean,
ugliest pick sixes I've ever seen.
For him to do that the day after Tom Brady was dragging him is a little bit on brand, man. Like, but is he dating Kay Adams? Did I see that?
I think there's just like those, like, it's like a bug that, like, yeah, I get like one of these a day now. It's like this person is dating Kay Adams.
I mean, that would at least be like, I give him some credit for that, but I mean,
I would have a whole new respect for him.
But I don't know. This guy, I feel bad for Giants fans, man.
Well, the worst
Malik
part
Neighbors
is,
had a decent, looks like 4 catches, 54 yards. It's something.
yeah. So like, I have a fantasy football draft coming up, and it's a keeper league, and it's like I've been like thinking about Malik Neighbors, and then I just saw Daniel Jones throw those interceptions. I'm like, I can't subject myself to that.
No, it's crazy, man. Why is the Falcons game not showing up here? I wanted to see what happened in that game. Anything jump out? Any other players having big moments here? It doesn't look like it. Does not look like it. All right, dude. Well, for folks that don't know, we are going to be doing a watch party. I'm going to be doing a watch party at 4:00 today. And it was a lot of fun last week. It was a ton of fun. So make sure you tune in for that. I'm looking here to see in the Falcons game if anything of note happened in there. 13-12. Yikes. No. Nothing. No players jumping out in that one. I'm looking for draft picks, other stuff. Trenton Simpson had a nice game for them. I watched early on. He was making some nice plays.
We liked him last year.
But yeah, dude. I think that we're set up to have a fun game tonight. So I'm looking forward to it. What are you going to do the rest of the day between now and then, or even during?
The Chiefs are playing the Lions 1:00 Pacific time on NFL Network. So the Chiefs are supposed to play their starters for a full half. It actually might be kind of watchable. Andy Reid's a big believer in the preseason. McVay's gone the other way. Reid's kind of, I don't know if he's trying to stick it to him or something, but it's pouring rain in Toronto today. There was thunderstorms, not a lot of outside activities. It's awful weather. So it's
Sounds
a
like
full
football.
slate of NFL games today. Literally, only 2 teams are left to play after today. So there's 14 games on today. My wife's kind of doing some stuff around the house, so I'm going to be watching a lot of stuff.
Football. I love it, dude. We got another new member, Rado17, man. Welcome to the crew. So great to have you. Love it. Give the show a like and click subscribe if you haven't already. Always so nice, Jeff, to have our Seahawks Saturdays checking in together and going through the league. We'll try to do this as much as we can throughout the season. And for folks that are going to watch the game, you might as well tune into the watch party, 4:00. So be back for that. And remember, ftnfantasy.com. Let's give them a big Hawk Blogger welcome. Go over there, use promo code Hawks, sign up, get Stats Hub. You will not regret having access to that. Especially if you're doing fantasy football, you're going to want to have this available to you. So head over into ftnfantasy.com and use promo code Hawks. All right, everybody. I'm Brian Nemhauser. I really loved spending the time with you today. I will see you again in a few hours, hopefully. Until then, this has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.